What would it mean to view this as a museum of disability, or rather, one that foregrounds the lived experience of those navigating the world in a body that the world isn't always designed for? So to bring us into that question a little bit, we've got our fourth speaker, Katie Samson, and she is a tireless disability educator and consultant and advocate. She's a peer mentor for Empower SCI, an organization for individuals with spinal cord injuries, a co-host of Article 19 podcast, and she runs the group Adaptive Birding for the Pennsylvania Center for Adaptive Sports. So everyone please give a big round of applause to Katie.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. I brought notes because, well, I'm pulling the wheelchair card. Whatever, it works. I haven't done this in a long time, too. Okay, so we all have life hacks, right? These are like the little tricks and trades that we do to kind of hack through all of the challenges in our day-to-day life. And through the organization Empower Spinal Cord Injury, we host every summer this really amazing camp, and it's designed for people who are 1 to 3 years post spinal cord injury to immerse themselves in holistic rehab. So we have physical therapists, occupational therapists, we have yoga, we do meditation, I take them out birding. The second day of camp, we do life hacks, and it's basically this opportunity for people to bring in adaptive devices, different types of equipment, resources that they've used throughout their life or throughout their experience. And just to set the stage for you, we are in like the most freezing cold room on the hottest day of summer. So it's like we're sweatshirts, we're all huddled together. There's about half the group that know each other really, really well, and half the group that are meeting for the first time and very hesitant to share any personal information. And it's kind of my favorite part of camp. And I think about it all the time leading up to it. Like, what am I gonna bring? Is it gonna be a kitchen utensil that I use every day? Is it going to be some sort of like fashion equipment that I've done like Velcro on a jacket or something? And just to give you a sense, like some people bring the craziest equipment, some people bring a website. And I can tell you like my favorite life hack that I've ever seen at Empower was this big, thick dictionary that someone brought. And I'm like sitting there looking as we're going around the circle, like, what is this gonna be about? And I gotta tell you, it's hilarious, but it's also a little weird. So when you have a spinal cord injury, you also have a neurogenic bowel that also can happen. And so you have to use enemas to give yourself, to make yourself poop. And oftentimes, if you don't have the dexterity to use an enema, you have to use other resources. And some of those resources come from medical catalogs that fashion these like crazy devices. But this particular person decided that the best use would to be lie vertical on a bed, lay on his side, plop the dictionary right behind his butt, stick the enema right in the big section, and then splat his hand down, and in goes the enema, and the rest is history. And it's like, we're all sitting there like, and he's like, you could use a Bible, you could use like, holy shit, right? I mean, honestly, who could think of anything better, right? So I have always been fascinated with material culture, like objects, and how objects, life hacks can have this sort of power to transcend the human experience. And I ended up going into museum studies. I went to graduate school for it and studied art history. And I was always really connected with how museum objects get displayed, how they get interpreted. And I ended up being a museum educator for almost 18 years. I also found my way into disability studies. And it was a sort of interesting transition for me because I acquired my disability later in life. And when I had my spinal cord injury, I was 20 years old. And this past year, I have now celebrated 25 years in a wheelchair. So I've lived more than half of my life disabled than non-disabled. And it was a real turning point for me in my life and kind of owning and claiming CRIP, which is sort of a term that's often thrown around in disability justice circles. And I was able to have this opportunity to teach disability studies for a short period of time as an adjunct faculty member at Westchester University. And I remember trying to frame this conversation around the different models that we look at disability, and one of them being the medical model, which you view disability as the problem of the individual that needs to be solved, that needs to be cured, that there is a remedy. And so it's like, fix us, right? But there's other lenses and other ways of framing disability. A lot of that is the social justice model, where you are really looking at it as the impairment isn't of the individual, but it's of society, right? There's like all of these barriers and all of these ways in which we have to navigate the world. There's also the affirmation model, which can create this opportunity to engage in a collection with objects, with a museum, in a sense that it's, you maybe have like a neutral understanding, or you have a positive affirming connection with something in the museum or something in the collection. And in January of this past year, my girlfriends from college and I went to Vegas. Yay, Vegas, yeah. As like 40-year-olds that are just like free from their children or free from like everyday life. So we're like, let's do Vegas on our terms, not, the way that it's written in the book. So we went to the old school strip to the Burlesque Museum. And we went to an inclusive burlesque dance workshop. I gotta tell you, like, everybody out there, get a boa. It changes your life. Like, just try it on, wear it around the house. You have no idea what it's gonna do to your psyche. So within this workshop, we got to tour through the museum, and I remember seeing a really like blinged out wheelchair on display in the Burlesque Museum, and it had all of these decorations and intricate designs, and it was like shiny and rhinestones everywhere. And I'm thinking, like, what is this doing in the Burlesque Museum? Where it turns out one of the most popular Puerto Rican burlesque dancers had a disability. And when she died, she donated her wheelchair to the Burlesque Museum. And I had this like incredible connection with this object. And I was like, not only was it her assistive device, but it was her life hack, but it was also like her own, and she claimed it, and it was also being kind of shared and established in the museum in a way that I felt this affirmation about myself and my connection to her and her artistry and her creativity. And it was sort of like this aha moment of, museums need to do more of this. And just this past week, my boyfriend and I came back to the Mütter, and I was just sort of like hunting around. Like, can I find this connection with an object? And sure enough, there is this display of Carol Orwell, who had FOP, which is a ossification disease that happens when your bones start to ossify, or your connective tissue starts to ossify. And she was an incredible individual that lived here in Philadelphia, was a disability advocate, and her desire was to be, her skeleton to be donated to the Mütter, but also her jewelry. And so I'm going around down in the lower collection of the gallery, and out of the corner of my eye is like a shiny object in a glass case. And it wasn't sterile, and it wasn't sort of on display for, scientific inquiry, but it was this sort of shiny object that told a different story of Carol. And I started to see a glimpse of what the Mütter could be and what the Mütter could do in sort of reclaiming that perspective and that affirmation quality of the medical model. Because at the end of the day, where we have an opportunity in this collection is to look at disability as innovative, to look at disability as creative, and to also think of adaptive tech as design innovation. And those life hacks that we can have can truly connect us, can center that human experience, but it can also empower visitors like myself to really think of like our place in the world, and not just one of medical curiosity and something that needs to be cured, but something that also can be celebrated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. So you mentioned this a little bit in your story, but it's very fun for me to be doing this event with you, because the only other time that we've met is like in a completely different context, which is birding. Our respective birding groups do like big and little sits together. So we met maybe like 2 years ago, I think, at the little sit out in Bartram's Garden. So yeah, I know you're very involved with the Pennsylvania Adaptive Sports, I think. And yeah, I just was curious if you could like say a little more about the role that has played in your life in that kind of community.
Yeah, it was one of those things that, you know, I always loved birding and I always connected with it, and I wanted to do more of it, especially during COVID. You know, we started like listening to bird calls and everybody dove deep into something, and my sourdough starter was birding. and I tried to go out and do outings like mask on and find my people, but it was always like, okay, we're gonna go off into the trail, and sorry, this is not accessible for you. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna build it if I can't find it. And so I started to seek out friends in the community that could give me some advice about where to find it. And I found this organization called Birdability that provided a lot of resources. And then I connected with PCAS, Pennsylvania Center for Adaptive Sports, who was at the time looking for more engagements with the outdoors. And so they were happy to insure the program, because that's a labor of love in and of itself. And it's been honestly like the joy of my life, and it's so strange to me because for a number of years after we started coming out of some of the major aspects of the pandemic, I was secretly on the side being like, I started a thing that's really cool. I met the love of my life, birding, and yet like the pandemic sucked for a lot of people. And so I was able to find this community through the pandemic, but also connect with Philly queer birders and in color birding and the feminist birders of Philly. And our little sit is honestly like my favorite day of the year. I mean, it is so fun, and y'all gotta come now because you know about it. And birds are everywhere, and they will be everywhere, hopefully, until you die. So come out and bird with us.
Yeah, you have to do and yeah, I think that's a good segue to my second question, which is, something, that comes out through that answer and just throughout your story is really how much community there is in your life and how central community has been to your own journey. So I guess, broadening that out to the question of, disability advocacy more broadly, like, what do you see as the role of community, and how do you build it?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think I'm a pretty outgoing person. I'd like to be around people. I need them in my life. Even like working remotely, sometimes I'll find myself like, I'm gonna go to Trader Joe's because those people get paid to have conversations with people. I've always been a true believer of the big bird mentality, like you have to be a friend to have friends, and that idea that you have to like kind of take that really big leap into trying to find those connections and trying to make those connections with people. And so to put yourself out there in a way that you're gonna just show up at a thing by yourself and see if you can make some connections and build that community, or finding that network that's gonna get you to that place that you feel, because it really takes a lot of courage. And I think especially in this day and age where we're so isolated and we're so remote, that even if you want to find that community, it's really hard because we're all just like nerding out on the wackiest things. But once you find that, it's so valuable. And I've been just really lucky to connect with communities that just have that sort of reciprocal relationship that kind of give it back to you, and then so.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. Here's my
I have a question.
Oh yes, Andre's got a question.
Personal one. What is your life hack? Which
Oh, what is your life hack? Oh my God.
Oh my God. One?
You're welcome to take it more than one.
Oh, my towel skirt. Yeah, yeah. So when maybe one a little less private. No, that's fine. I use a shower wheelchair. It's like a waterproof wheelchair to take my shower. And I had this trouble sort of figuring out how do I get to my bedroom from my bed in the shower chair, but like with privacy involved. But I can't wrap a whole towel around me and I can't wear a bathrobe. So I cut a towel in half and I have like a little strap that goes around the back. So it's like an apron that's Velcroed. And I have a seamstress that lives right down the street that fashions them for me. And so yeah, it's like a towel skirt, towel apron, so to speak. But if you come up behind me from the back, you'll see like my butt crack hanging out of the back of the wheelchair. So it's sort of private if you're looking at me from the front. Yeah.
So yeah, follow Katie from her bedroom to her shower with caution. Thank you so much, Katie.